What was something you learned the hard way?
I guess that I should have asked your father for help with taking care of the children when they were little.
She doesn't think
I didn't-
that's what
I didn't learn it
caused it.
soon enough.
You never know.
Describe a time when your life took an unpredictable turn.
Well, lots of times we thought we were lawyers and then we were farmers. Then we thought we were farmers and then we were cattle ranchers. And then we changed from cattle ranching in Phoenix to cattle ranching in Morenci. And all those were, oh my goodnesses. And then we sold the ranch and became a lawyer again. And then we went on the mission. And then we went to the temple. All of those were, oh my goodness. We didn't even mention that he was called to be a regional representative in about 1970-something.
79.
Well, it was interesting because that day we had visitors. We were living over there, and Mom had family company over here. So I spent most of my time over here, and we were trying to get lunch ready and everything. So I ran back and forth for lunch fixings, and the phone rang. And he said, "This is Brother Haycock." I knew who Brother Haycock was. He was President Kimball's secretary. And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Is Brother Udall there?" And I said, "No, he's up at the ranch. Can you have him call me back?" I said, "I don't know if he's by a phone. I will try." He gave me the phone number. So I called up there and I got the ranch house and the cowboy's wife. So I gave her the message, and so after a while, and so all that afternoon, I had this big whoosh. About every 30 seconds it would go whoosh. It was the funniest thing.
Wonder what trouble my husband's in now.
So I can't remember the sequence after that, but before he called them, they called the ranch number, and he was there. And so then later he called and told me that, what Brother Haycock said was that they really needed to get in touch with him before 5 o'clock because President Kimball had to go to Canada at 5 o'clock. So this was what the urgency was. And so they got in touch with him, gave the message and all that stuff. And I said to your dad, "Why didn't you call him back?" And he said, "Well, I had to go wash my hands and change my shirt." To
You
make the
can't
phone
call the president of the church in a dirty shirt with your hands dirty.
But that was an interesting afternoon for both of us. But the regional representative was a lovely assignment too, because see, by then we didn't have any kids. No, we had 2 kids here at home.
Yeah.
What did we do? Just left you home and it was all right. Anyway, I went with him on the assignments. And that was lovely because first his assignment was the Tucson Safford region.
Yeah, for 1 year.
Uh-huh. And so we got acquainted with the stake presidents in Tucson
In St. David.
and St. David. They were wonderful friends. And then they reassigned him to Mesa.
And later I found out why.
Why?
Because the Eldon Cooley and a bunch of other big farmers, L.R. Layton, they had a bunch of welfare farms down there, and they had organized what was called MAC farms, Maricopa something or other, and they were running I don't know how many thousand acres of welfare farms down there with this big committee, and
And the computer system.
and a computer system and all kinds of stuff. They'd been instructed to turn that all back to the stakes like they were supposed to do, and they wouldn't do it. So they released somebody or assigned them somewhere else and said to me, go down there and take over, be the
Fix it.
regional representative, and get rid of this Mac Farms business. So I did. And I wasn't in a combative mood. I was just doing what I'd been told. And but we got it all back in the hands of local stakes like it was supposed to be. And so then we stayed there for 6 or 7 more years.
That
And
region.
with 8 stakes, one of which was a Globe Miami stake.
Oh yeah, that was fun to get acquainted with those too. And the one that, what's his name? The National Bank person was, Valley National Bank person was the stake president. Hakes.
Clayton Hakes.
It was fun. And the thing I learned from Clayton Hakes, the president of that stake, was he worked for the Valley National Bank, lived in Mesa and worked in Phoenix. And it was, even at that early time, the traffic was horrendous and it took you an hour to come and go to work.
Each way.
And so I said, oh my goodness, doesn't that just drive you crazy? And he says, nope. He says, I made up my mind early on that it was going to be my relaxing time. So I just went with the flow. By the time I got home, I was all unstressed and everything was fine. That was so good. And I don't know who was the stake president. The other stake presidents down there, one was a brother and sister, what's their name?
Beezer.
Beezer, the Beezers. That was fun because they gave us their bedroom when we went to visit. And so,
They insisted.
yeah,
We take
there's
them
not
out
much you
to-
can do about it except go to a motel, and we'd rather be with them. So we went to bed, and about midnight or 1 o'clock, somebody grabbed my toe and said, I'm home, Mom. I said, okay.
And he went on.
Oh, cute. And I don't know who was the stake president of the Mesa South stake, or wasn't there one at that time?
Yeah, it was the guy who ran the cloths, the sewing center. What was his name?
Olson?
Carl Olson. Yeah.
No. He was after you way many years.
Well, this was after me. Maybe it was Wilbur Wolf.
Okay, maybe. Either one, that was fine. I can't remember the others either. But it was a lovely assignment.
Remember a time when you demonstrated faith in yourself?
Well, it had to be all the way through or else. No, I don't know a specific.
All right.
Oh, I guess the mission was the biggest one because I realized I could do what they wanted. I could talk to people. And it wasn't my big forte.
Your epitome?
My
Yeah.
epitome.
And the missionaries all very quickly discovered that she loved him. It was fascinating.
But you just took every opportunity. We went to Clinton, Illinois, visiting some members. And it was in the snowy, icy winter. And we were leaving their house, and their wooden porch had wooden steps down 6 or 7 steps. And as I went down the steps, I slipped and landed on my hip on the ground. In my pocket was an apple, and it smashed the apple and cushioned my fall so that I wasn't hurt. And you wouldn't believe how much juice there is in an apple. My coat was soaked, and so I had to take it to the cleaners. So I took it to the cleaners, and I said, I guess I'll tell you what this is so you'll know how to clean it. So I gave her the story. And so I said, we're missionaries, and would you like to hear about the church? And she said, sure. And so she gave me her name and everything. And as we left the cleaning shop, there were the two missionaries walking by, so I gave them the referral. Things like that were a lot of fun.
And one time, a couple of missionaries down in one of the southern cities there in our group, they were riding their bike this way, and the woman was jogging going the other way. And she, as they went by, she turned around and caught up with them and stopped him and said, I want you to give me the discussions. We had an elder Pond who made a list of effective ways to find contacts.
Right, yeah.
And number 35 on his list was sitting in your apartment waiting for somebody to call you.
One day I went to the dentist, and so you're supposed to only read your scriptures, so I had my scriptures with me, and I was reading my scriptures, and on the other end of the bench was a lady who said, I've read in your Mormon Bible. And I said, oh, tell me about that. And so she said that it had been a couple of years or so before, and she said, I was going to make a change in my life. And it was a hard decision to make because it probably wasn't a good decision.
Did she tell you what it was?
No. And so she said then, shortly after that, somebody knocked on the door, and she went to the door, and there were the two Mormon elders looking so gorgeous. She said, the minute I saw them, just like that, I knew that I wasn't going to do what I had decided to do. And I just know that missionaries have a lot more influence than they're ever aware of. Ever aware of. One of the companionships said that they were teaching a guy who had been watching TV, and one of the Mormon ads came on. Flipped the channel. The same ad was on the next channel. Flipped it again, and the third channel.
So he said, I better call that number.
I guess this message is for me. Fun things. But we didn't have a lot of baptisms in Illinois. We just had fun.
Average 5 or 6 a month.
Not much, or 20 sometimes. But
And once in a while, you get as high as 20.
not very often.
Usually it was 6 or less. And we I can't remember the exact context of this, but one of the relatively new missionaries was giving a report, or else he had been out with somebody else during the first day. When what we would do, we'd bring them down off the plane, and we'd while I interviewed each one of them, we'd take about half of them, and they'd take them out tracting, and then the other half would go. And so this one boy said, whenever this was,
That I couldn't believe what happened.
I said, yeah, I couldn't believe what happened to me today. He said, I knocked on this door. The guy opened it. There were dirty pictures on the wall.
He was in his underwear.
He was in his shorts, and he was smoking. He was a dirty-looking old guy, and he said, I would never have even looked his way in the old days back in Utah, where he was from. But he said, here, I've suddenly felt like this man's a possibility. I need to get in and put my arm around him. So I went in.
He said, I instantly loved him.
Yeah.
And he was so surprised. All the war stories. Could go on and on.
Love
Never
it.
mind.
Good stuff.
So what was your question?
Doesn't matter.
Did you find a deposit?
I couldn't.
Tell me about some of your most romantic times.
That you feel free to talk about.
I guess that's the fifth, too.
They're not PG.
That's right.
Tell me about a time when you were unexpectedly overcome by love.
Oh, when each child was born. And when each one was in the elementary school and they would do something wonderful in a program or whatever, makes you cry because kids are sincere and it's wonderful. Overcomes you.
And that was the center of our life, you 8 kids. Very, very much the center of our life.
Couldn't help it. There wasn't time for anything else.
And Nona would sit in church, and if there was a man in front of her, after a while she'd be rubbing the back of his neck where the hair was short and stiff. And there's something about that that really intrigued her.
I think she'd still do it if it were appropriate.
Was there ever a time when it seemed like, where am I going? Oh. Do you ever have an instance where time seemed to slow down and you knew you were part of something big that was happening?
Slowed down times were when we were kids and it was so long between Christmases. But that got faster and faster. No, I don't have a comment on that.
What are some of the best ideas you've ever had?
I've had a lot of good ideas, and once he said, I get some of my best ideas from you. That's what he said. He doesn't remember that probably. No, I don't know that either.
If later on you remember, you can come back and tell me. So.
Okay.
Again, this is the reflection section, so some of these you may not have thought about. Tell about some of the ambiguities or contradictions in your life.
Have a thought? I don't, that doesn't connect.
Okay. When have you felt most uncertain?
I guess it's when he wanted to move back over here. I told him I wouldn't go.
My answer? We were at something one night, and this old boyfriend from Safford, this was years later, he was there, and I suddenly realized she was animated. She was excited to be there and to talk to him. And I went and got a hold of her and said, let's go home. I'm uneasy. And I told her why, and we went home. But she reassured me.
It's always lovely to see old friends.
Say more about the decision to come back over here and why that was.
Well, you know, we had lived in Gilbert for almost 25 years, and all our kids were, it was home for everybody. And we still had 4 kids in school. And I didn't want to come back here. But he said, I'm going. Are you going with me?
I exercised my priesthood authority. But it was complicated very seriously by the fact that I had been the stake president now for 5 years. They called me and Which one called me?
I don't know who it was.
Brother Hunter, who eventually became the president of the church. He was coming to divide the stake.
We had 15 units
And he
in the
said,
stake.
he
Big.
said, I tell you ahead of time, we want you to continue as the president of the Mesa South stake, and we're going to divide off some of a number of the wards. And I said, I have a problem. We've been talking about moving back to our hometown. He said, well, you decide that and let me know when I get there. So I agonized over that for 2 or 3 weeks. And in retrospect, it was the right thing to do. For a number of reasons.
So after he was released, he drove back and forth over here to take care of farm and ranch. And we all stayed in Gilbert for that year while Elaine was a senior in high school. And then we just left and came up here and moved in with Mom and Dad. And
Well, they were living in this house.
yeah. And we remodeled that one over there.
That's right.
Added the upstairs bedrooms and bath, and actually we gutted the house and started over so that it was adequate. And that summer we left Elaine and the boys, Brooks and Colin, there to fend for themselves. Did we even give them any money? I don't remember any of that. What'd they do? Terrible.
Elaine had a job over here, remember?
Well, she came here for a little while, but that's also the summer that she went back east with Jessica Ann to the centennial, sesquicentennial, bicentennial?
Of the country.
1976 from 1776, that 200 years, what's that?
Bicentennial.
Bicentennial.
That was a what were the big animals that roamed the plains?
Buffalo?
A buffalo
Buffalo.
centennial, the bison.
Oh,
Centennial.
well, anyway, so she went back there, and then that was also the year that Grandma Udall died. And she was with Mylon and Jessica Ann when Grandma Udall died, and so Mylon and Jessica flew back here and left Elaine and Jessica Ann to drive a car. And I guess Jessica Ann was 20 and Elaine 18. And they drove all across the country by themselves.
I think they were somewhere in North Texas by the time they got the message. Anyway, that's not critical. We get that straight.
So,
But when I heard my mother had died, I broke down and cried harder than I've ever cried before in my life. I was totally shook up by that.
that was the year that we had planned to go to Lake Powell. And we debated whether to still go or not, because she had died and it was just 3 weeks away. And everybody said, there's no reason for us to not go. I remember walking on the beach with Grandpa Udall one evening, and he said, I wonder where my little mama is now.
Huh.
But he went along, and we all had a wonderful time.
And we had a big debate on whether Nixon should resign or not.
I remember that.
And me and all the girls decided he should, and all the boys said, oh no, he's...
Hang in there. What have we got? White showing?
The priesthood is showing.
Is it okay now?
Yep. That was a fun trip.
That was.
Chief White Legs. That was Uncle David.
Yeah, they had nice programs and lots of swimming and boating and skiing. We had 3 houseboats. And when we got on the houseboat and had left the dock, we found out that we had left our suitcases there.
And taking somebody else's.
No, we didn't take anybody else's. We just left them sitting there. So we had to borrow everything from everybody the whole trip.
But we got by all right.
We got back, they were waiting for us. I packed so carefully.
What fears have you conquered and how?
Well, as I said, it was hard for me to greet people, and I didn't do it well enough. One of the ward members, when he was the bishop, made an appointment to see him, and his question was, "What have I done to offend your wife? She doesn't speak to me."
And I said, Ray, that's just her. She's just timid. My advice to you is you speak to her and assume everything's fine. So he did, and it was all right.
Well, and I hope I overcame what I thought was the problem, because I'd be somewhere and I'd see him or somebody else come in, and I would think in my mind, "Oh, hi there,"
Right.
in my mind. But
What am I doing? Nothing?
so anyway, I guess I overcame the shyness for the most part. And the green-eyed monster, I overcame that pretty good.
What was that?
The envy of other people's pretty houses.
Oh, I thought you were jealous of me.
Oh, you were good.
And let me add a note, Jordan. I don't know if we've already talked to you about this, but if we have, let me do it again. Our experiences in the temple, that was kind of a culminating, very, very valuable, rewarding experience for us while we were there in the temple. I remember once we were on duty, and I had been in one of the sessions, and it was about ready to start, and I had gone up to talk to somebody about something, and as I was walking back out to get out of the way, there was a girl, a young woman on the end of the row, and she reached up and touched my coat, and I stopped. She said, "I'm Cal Udall's daughter. I didn't know you knew me." And Cal Udall was my cousin who never quit smoking, never was active in the church.
Some of his kids were.
Yeah.
We were happy to meet her. It's good.
And I've said to my wife a number of times, and she always said, "But we can't do that." I would love dearly to take all of you quietly in a sacred place and talk to you about some of the other things that happened while we were there. But we shouldn't talk to you about them even if we were in the temple. They were too sacred and special, and it was a very uplifting spiritual time. And we were close to each other, and we had a good house, and we had lots of family who came, and the little grandchildren would come on Sunday evening and just be there, just visit.
Well, what they did was, instead of dragging Maine, they dragged Temple.
Yeah, they go walk
They
around.
walk around the temple and pick up friends along the way, and come back and have root beer floats. It was fun. I remember it was Mark Favreau's era, and so it was that age group that came. And one time, Elder Scott had a meeting at the temple. It was on a Sunday, and it was about time for him to leave, and the teenage kids at the temple home waiting for us to come home had said, "Well, would it be okay if we came and met Elder Scott?" So we asked him, and he says, "Oh, by all means, have him come."
Bring him in. So we took him into the foyer.
Just in the foyer. And he said to them, "It is such a privilege to be in the temple with you." Sweet. Elder Scott was a rocket scientist kind of person in his livelihood.
Well, he was involved. He was a Navy person. He was involved in the design and testing of the first nuclear submarine.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah,
And
with
then
Admiral. What was his name?
Nimitz?
No, Richtofen or something.
Rickover?
Who was the main guy? He was one of his chief lieutenants.
And Elder so-and-so that was on our mission that I just talked about, that their son pulled my toe. What was his name? State president that we stayed in their home. And
Oh yeah,
what's his name?
Beezer.
Okay, President Beezer was involved with the trip to the moon. And I'm not sure what it is, but he was related to the trip enough that he
Very good.
had his family names
Mine is tomorrow.
printed on a little plaque, and they left it on the
Oh,
moon.
it's still cranking along.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks like it's still going to work.
They came on the mission as a mission couple, and they were. He had already been a mission president, and they came as a couple, and it was pretty neat.
I do too.
We had some highfalutin people.
That day, wouldn't we?
One of our missionary couples was
And
Chauncey Riddle, who
who
had been head of the religious history department at BYU. He had some wonderful insights to give the missionaries.
Oh
It
yes,
was
she'll be
really neat.
anesthetized.
Nice.
No.
All right, what is one of the hardest things you've ever had to do?
She'll probably be in about 2
Move back
hours.
here.
Okay.
I got over it.
But see, the instructions are.
What changes have you made, did you make reluctantly, that turned out to work well?
Well, that one, moving back over here, was fine.
She doesn't eat her bacon anyway. You still there?
And moving out of the great big house on the farm into a little cracker box. We never regretted that, because we were in town where there were people.
Yep.
Was that?
Marcy and her phone quit.
Oh,
You just want to know how everything was.
How did you get past some of your biases and prejudices?
for whom?
Noble Admiral.
Oh. Did I ever get over that?
You can joke about it.
You just have to let them go. They
My
are-
biggest one was Willie. I reached the point where I hated him and everything he stood for, and I would swear at him every time I was close to him. And one day I took Mom and Jana aside and I said, "We can't continue like this. It's ruining my life. I'm becoming a Scrooge." And so I called him and said, "Willie, I'm not going to talk to you like that anymore. I will be polite. Anytime you want to talk to me, feel free to do so. I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to be angry anymore." And I was able to do it.
What have you fought for in your life?
Have I fought for something? I don't know. Life's been easy. Life's been easy.
What community of people have you felt deeply connected to?
Community of people?
Yes.
Gilbert Ward.
Yeah, the Gilbert Ward.
Nicest house take.
Yeah,
Thatcher Ward.
not so much. The Mission. And the Temple. You get quite involved with all of those.
What did you receive and what did you give
Where and when?
to those communities of people?
Oh. We tried to give friendship and service, and we received the same thing back. What would you say?
When were times in your life when you felt fully committed to something?
We got married. When the kids were born. I guess all the way along. You don't have, you can't keep reservations about things. You just accept and go forward.
Melba Lamro said to her once, "I think if your husband told you to jump off a cliff, you'd do it." And Leona said, "I guess you're right, I would."
What do you think was the driving force behind those commitments?
I'm sure it's the church.
And each other.
Okay,
You want to turn it off and see what Clifton needs?
sure. What were some times when you followed your intuition and sometimes when you held back?
Well, I don't think of any. I
Okay.
ran away from home 2 or 3 times and came back again, so I guess the coming back was the right
Some-
decision.
That was not this home, it was our home.
That wasn't last week.
No.
Tell me about the running away and coming back.
Well, it was just overwhelming to have the responsibility of all the children and not get enough sleep and just be so tired and worn out you just couldn't hardly put one foot in front of the other. And in the middle of that, I went to a primary meeting and the bishop was giving a little talk and it was straight at me and I left the room.
Oh, was that right? I didn't know that.
And
Who was the bishop?
I think it was Warren Peterson.
Huh.
Anyway, so, and I think another time I did too, but I was only gone for 10 minutes. They survived, and I came home. It's hard.
Where did you go?
Oh, drove around in the car for a while.
Did you come back to the church or back to the house?
Back to the house. I didn't go back to the church that time. But I left the house another time. It was probably in the middle of a depression before I had put the blame on you. Made your stomach ache. Yeah, there are things I should have done differently. I should have invited his help, and I didn't do it. So I paid the consequences. So did he. One time, one of David's kids, was it Joe and Heidi or Bill and his wife, came to the house at the Temple home. They had just come from a fireside where they were the speakers. They were talking about marriage relationships. And they said, if the wife needs help, she needs to go and ask the husband to come and help. Slamming the cupboard doors will not send any kind of a message to him at all. Oh. So,
That's good advice.
yeah.
It's all about a lost opportunity.
When we went to university after we were married, I should have graduated. And I just fooled around. I had 4 years. I could have. That was a big lost opportunity. I don't know that it would have done me any good, but it would have been a thing to do that I should have done.
Describe some acts of kindness or compassion that you've experienced.
One time, when we lived down on the farm, we were going to have a state mutual party. And my brother Gordon came and mopped my floor. And one time when we lived up on Silver Creek Road, and we were having a conference visitor, one of my friends came and washed my windows.
Who was that?
Barbara.
What's her name?
Barbara, what's her name? There were probably others. I can't think of them right now.
What thoughts and memories bring tears?
That? Guess I don't think of any others right now, but yeah. When Gordon died, Gerald and Floyd and I were all living down there. And they came to the house, our house on the farm. And we had a group hug because we felt so bereft. Gordon was killed on Thursday evening, and they had the funeral on Saturday. It was really soon, but I guess it was the right time. It was a hard time. Beverly says, I think we both knew that Curtis was deaf, but we hadn't talked about it.
But they knew that Cherie was.
Oh yeah, she was 10 when he died.
Do you remember at the time if there were things that people did or said that were helpful?
At the time of his death?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember. I think your dad's given the funeral sermon for everybody we ever knew. Didn't you do
Right,
that?
I did that, didn't I?
Yeah.
And also Uncle Gerald.
And your parents.
New topic.
Okay.
Tell a time in your life when you may have been in the greatest danger.
Well, I avoided it. It's when he was building a road and I refused to drive the truck on it.
So I stopped the car and went back to see what was happening. She said, "This is too dangerous. You're going to have to drive this truck."
I don't know. I don't know. It might be right now because of the things I haven't repented of thoroughly. And that's another, I take the fifth.
What stories from your life would you like someone to know that shed light on what has meant the most to you? That's a pretty big topic.
That's a big topic.
If it's too broad, we can go on.
I can't come to it.
Tell of a past event that still holds untouched areas of pain.
I'm going to take the fifth on that one.
Okay.
Chicken.
I don't know. I have 3 of those. So we'll just let that go.
How come I only know of one?
Oh, you probably know all of them. You just haven't thought of them.
They wouldn't be helpful for other people to understand.
No.
Tell what brought you through a time of spiritual crisis. If any.
Well, I don't know if I'm through with it, with those 3 unresolved things. Well, actually, I guess one is resolved. The other 2 are unresolved.
But you can't talk about them.
What's the one that's resolved? Same answer?
What?
You're not going to talk about it?
No,
Would you if I were alone with you?
you already know. I don't
One of
know.
those kind of.
What have been your most difficult losses?
Trevor was hard. Gordon was hard. The grandparents weren't that hard because they were older.
Or your dad?
No, Dad.
Are there any events that made you question your values or beliefs?
Not really. Just my living up to them.
Was there ever a time when you felt close to giving up on life?
No, unless it was yesterday.
Who would you trust with your deepest feelings and secrets?
Oh, your father. I would trust him with you guys too, but I don't need to. I've never felt close enough to a bishop to do much of that. And I guess maybe I never had really the occasion.
What is the luckiest thing that ever happened to you?
Marrying your dad. Right?
I'll vote for that.
If I complete this sentence, all my life I've had a sense that
The church is true? We've had wonderful experiences in spite of the fact that we're just kind of medium people.
What have you loved most in your life?
You're hungry again?
I guess.
Can I answer that for her?
After she has a chance.
Well, everything, you know. I've had moods of depression, but they were passing. And so actually, everything was wonderful. Really. In retrospect.
But she and I have said a number of times that our children and their families, the Lord couldn't have blessed us anymore.
Yeah.
Not just that we had children, but that they are excellent people. They're achievers. They're gentle. They're good.
It's a true thing. And for your parents to realize that two of their children were not faithful must have been horrible for them. Even though they were wonderful people.
What are some of the mysteries of life that you still contemplate?
I was contemplating one this morning. You're sitting on a thing that has the camels. I don't know that this is the Magi from the East or not. But this is one big thing that I wonder about. How did they know they were to follow the star? And how long did they follow the star? Did it shine only from the time he was born, and so they traveled so that they didn't get there till he was older? Or did it shine early enough for them to come close to the birth time? How did they know? And what did the scriptures say about that? They say the Magi from the East. So they were, how far east? And how did they know? That's a big question I have right now.
It's a good topic.
All right.
If you were to be honored for something in your life, what would you want it to be?
Oh my goodness, there's nothing to be honored for. Well, of course, except that. I've thought of people who have achieved, like Peggy Hancock. She got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do her painting and make her china dolls. Never wanted to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do that. So, there have been people who have achieved at what I thought was too great a cost. So, I guess just that you guys turned out good. And if I had anything to do with it, that's wonderful. If not, it's okay.
What are your basic beliefs about people?
That they're good. We in the office, when people would come in, we'd talk about religion. Nearly everybody believed the same way we do, whether they were members or not. That there was a hereafter, that the Spirit was strong and guided them. Some people are quite fervent about those things. And if you need to eat, go. I think people are basically good. Except maybe the very middle and youngest generation. I think they're losing something that isn't taught in the schools. And nobody else teaches them either. The moral values and the things about marriage and all that stuff. What was the question?
I think you answered it.
Okay.
What 3 statements would tell the most about your philosophy of life?
He knows them.
You repeat them.
The church is true. Heavenly Father has been good to us. The best is yet to come. We concur on that.
Final question. To this point, which have been the happiest times of your life?
Gosh, all the way along.
Isn't that interesting? That's exactly what I was going to say. Everything. There have been little dips of disappointment, but
It's wonderful right now to know that the kids are all faithful and competent and all those good things, good parents, and that they're taking over the world.
and their parents.
Yeah. And helpful with us.